Hey everyone, welcome back to part 2. If you like what you happen to see, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, and it would definitely mean a lot. So the day has finally arrived. Good news has happened, and my shocks have come in. And so pretty excited for these, as I am most things in this build. I think I've said that more than I have anything else. But as mentioned before, kind of wanted to actually talk about these shocks a little bit. These are 8216 Coney. They're 1907 Spa 1, and all that means is just the 1907 referencing the length of the series, and then Spa 1 is a special designator that they used for drag racing applications back in the day. But any shock can be revalved to whatever it is that you need it to be revalved to, and they happen to be the exact length that we use for our front SLA suspension, and I knew that they would work out pretty well for the rear, and so far I've been pretty happy with them. So I had them sent off to Pro Parts USA. They're in Arizona, I believe. And first off, I want to say customer service was awesome. If you ever have any shocks that you're looking to get rebuilt, expect a little bit of a lead time. They do have a backlog, but the quality and the customer service was pretty spot on. The guy, Jeff, I believe is his name, was very prompt in returning phone calls, always answering questions. Really happy with it. Left them a great review. The only things that I will say that you might have to specify if you're going to go to them in the future, the last time that I had shocks rebuilt was by a company called True Choice, and they are the ones who rebuilt the front ones. I don't know what happened to them. I assume they went out of business because I wasn't able to get a hold of them or find their site anymore. But when they rebuilt the last set, they cleaned up all of the threads, made it all look pretty. They gave me a new bump stop. These look like they were not replaced, which these aren't in bad condition, but I guess I was just kind of having that expectation in my mind to have everything be kind of cleaned up and ready to go, but it's really not a big deal either way. They're still fully functional. They feel great. Definitely a much stiffer shock than anything that I've had in the past, which makes sense as it is definitely a heavier spring that I've ran in the past. And so this is the final product. Really happy with the turnout other than what I mentioned, and ready to get these things installed on the car. Here we go. I love seeing progress. It makes me all happy and warm and fuzzy inside. But I was able to get the 1 inch hex stock back from my grandpa. He happened to cut it in half and turn it down for me. He has a nice lathe at his house and I don't. So he cut it in half at the measured mark that I had, and then drilled and tapped it for the heim joints, the 1/2 inch 20 for the ones that came with the bell crank, and then the 9/16 rod end that was intended for the lower control arm. You know, as I mentioned earlier on, the bolt hole for the lower control arm was 14 millimeters, and the 9/16 bolt fit perfectly. However, it took them several weeks to get these rod ends in, and they sent me the wrong diameter rod ends. So this hole is actually 5/8. And instead of waiting for new ones to show up, I decided that I was just going to drill out the hole on the control arm for 5/8, which works out. It's a slightly stronger bolt supporting the push rod, so I'm not too upset about it. But anyway, here's what it looks like with weight on the car. Or weight on the suspension is what I meant to say. The only thing that I messed up and mismeasured was the distance here with the push rod. I think I would have been okay, and I'll show you down here in just a second. I had to do a spacer, and I think the spacer is just kicking out a little bit too far. So, you know, it is what it is. I probably didn't need to cut out so much right here, but there's no turning back at this point. What I also want to do is that, as you can tell, this is all riveted metal, and right below here, you have beautiful access to the frame rail of the car. I think the next time that I drop the rear end of this car, which will be soon because it needs a diff cooler and I want to do a couple other things, so more videos to come. But I'm going to take these out and I'm going to do a crossbar down to the frame rail. I don't think it really needs it, but it gives me more of a peace of mind and helps support it as well. So kind of looking down below, grab the flashlight. There's where we're at, and you can kind of see I ended up having to get that spacer, and it goes up Really happy. There's so much space to work with now. So, hip hip, hooray. Yeah. And my perceived measurements were pretty close. I'm not at ride height right now, but the spring compressed to 1.75 inches as it currently sits, and there's still weight being supported by the bridge jack. So I think estimating that 2 inches for static compression was pretty spot on in terms of measurement. And when I get the shocks in it, I think it'll line up nearly perfectly. So golden. All right, everyone, this is it, the moment we've been waiting for, or at least the one that I've been waiting for a couple weeks now. We're going to drop it on the ground. Was able to get the shocks in place. It did require a little bit of moving my bridge jack up and down to get the bolt holes to line up just right. But other than that, really excited currently, and we're going to drop it down, see how it compresses. Make sure there's not a lot of flex in, make sure there's no flex. I don't want any flex in the crossbar. And then make sure that everything is operating as it should by giving it a couple of jumps, some bounces on the car itself. Whew. Nervous. Watch your toes. I just got the car out for a test drive, and I'm really pleased with everything and how it's turned out. I'm not going to go on here and say like, wow, the cantilever suspension, completely changed my car, because it didn't. But what did change the feel of the car was going up to that spring that I was hoping would be beneficial. It seems like it did. I went up to 700 pounds, as I've mentioned throughout the videos, from about a 525, I think is what I had previously. So about 175 pound difference in the back. And then off camera, which maybe I'll make another video later on, I did do some adjustments to the SLA suspension that I have up front. I raised the shock mount up a little bit, which gave me some more travel, and before I had like a sliver. And I also adjusted the spring pressure in the front as well. And so I think between the combination of those two, it seemed to really liven up the car. I definitely have to go back and do another alignment, but the way this thing felt was significantly better than what it was previously. I have a video that I'm about to show you after this that goes into just the first test drive, but I did take it back out and kind of get on a little bit outside of the neighborhood, and I was really happy with the way that it responded. Front end felt really light. It definitely felt like it had a little bit more responsiveness than it did previously, which would make sense based on the spring rate. I won't really be able to feel anything until I take it to the track, and so I'll have to give you another update at that point. But really happy, as I have been throughout this build. Kind of going back and touching on a couple of the other things that I have talked about for the part 1 and part 2. I don't think I'm gonna have to brace the bar that goes across. The way that is, I don't see any deflection. I have mounted cameras inside, above and below, and there's no deflection in that bar whatsoever, and I don't see much deflection in the shock mounts either. So I think I'm going to be okay without having to do that. When I remove the rear end to do some other work, I'm probably going to brace it at that point anyway, just to give myself some reassurance and something that I'm not gonna have to worry about down the road. But I'm not too concerned about it, at least for the first track event that I have coming up in April. I'll take it out after that first weekend. I'll go over, look it all over again, and make sure I don't see any deformation, cracking, or issues at that point. But really enjoy it so far. The shocks are currently at the softest settings, and it seemed to be okay at the softest settings. I have them valved to accommodate, I think, like 600 to 900, and I'm obviously on that right kind of in the lower middle end of that spectrum. Other than that, I don't think that I have really anything much else to say for the rest of my time, which I'm not going to do a video of, is just put the car back together. I'm probably going to do a little plexiglass overlay inside that sheet metal so that I can look at the suspension, just because I think it's cool. And then we're going to go from there. So I hope that you have enjoyed these past 2 videos, and I really am doing it for the sole purpose of I'm having fun, but I also want you to have the opportunity to take something away and bring it back to your car if it's something that you're looking at doing, or maybe something that you haven't thought of. Hopefully I've been able to help out with that. If you guys have any questions for me, don't be afraid to comment or message me, and I'll be happy to get back to you. But thanks for tuning in, and here's the video of the first drive out. Thanks.
Yeah,